Bertie, the Prince of Wales, was spending most of his time traveling with the fast set. He liked the high life. And horse racing and gambling and private clubs. He and his cronies set up a sex club in Paris. Pornography was a bigger industry then than it is today, despite all the Victorian nonsense you've heard. But he had a brief fling with Princess Jeanne de Sagan in Cannes when he was visiting that area. Alexandra knew about this. The Queen certainly knew about it. And she tried to settle him down, separate him from his pals. It's the people he runs with, you know. That was her attitude. Of course, when she tried to separate him from his friends, this caused greater resentment between mother and son. The Prince of Wales liked rich men. I mean, materially rich men. Like Baron de Rothschild. You call him Rothschild, but Rothschild was his name. And men like that. They clustered around him, and he went to them. In 1870, he was involved in a dreadful divorce scandal, which was in the newspapers. There was a big public trial, and he was called as a witness. He wasn't the third party, but he was somebody that the Mordaunt's knew well, and so he was called as a character witness. And, of course, that got in the newspapers, and it was a scandal, and the public likes to associate the worst with the highest. And Prime Minister Gladstone, who was in and out of power at this period, and a friend of the Waleses, attempted to get Bertie to cool off. His lifestyle was just too hectic for the public to absorb. They were losing public support. Queen Victoria, his mother, never appeared in public. She wouldn't do it. And the Prince of Wales was being seen in the newspapers as a rake. Well, it was a couple of years later that the Prince of Wales met the Jersey Lily. Lily Langtry, an actress. She was 23, perfectly gorgeous, with a waist like this. I'll never forget that waist. Men like to put their hands around. She was a great friend of Oscar Wilde's. In fact, all the Bloomsbury set, as we used to call them, not really, but that crowd of litterateurs and actors and opera singers and so on, the Prince of Wales loved these people. In 1901, Queen Victoria died, and now the Prince of Wales was King Edward VII, and Alexandra was the Queen Consort. He was stout and worldly, weary, really, and not that popular. She was lame and deaf and much loved because everybody saw her as the wounded wife, you know, that the wife that had been wounded in her husband's paramour's activities. Edward spent most of the time of his reign traveling around Europe and abroad and everywhere, and then in London, the season in London at Buckingham Palace, theater parties. His court was quite delightful. The best court since Charles II. Actresses and opera singers and racing touts and everybody entertaining. Very giddy. Spent 3 months of the year traveling abroad, which is good. I suggest 4 for a good marriage. Separate. Maybe 6 is the best. 6 months apart each year, then the marriage will really last. The king, Edward VII, suffered from chronic bronchitis. He was a chain smoker, cigars mostly, and gout from time to time. Regardless, you know, he went on. He was a genial, charming monarch. He had very little interest in the affairs of government. He couldn't care about the colonial and economics, all these boring. But he took an interest in Army Navy reforms and diplomacy, but the rest of it, no. He had a good relationship with his eldest son, George, which was strange. Mrs. Keppel, his mistress, kept him in touch with his own cabinet, on good terms, I should say. But in 1910, he suffered a series of heart attacks and died. He was 69 years old.